missed y'all. Hello. Oh no. Ah. Oopsies. I forgot my books are back here. I got it. It's cold in my car. I don't have my motherfucking tabs. God! Every time I forget them. Well, and I'd say every time that I forget them, I'm like, oh, I need to bring my extra tabs and put them in here. And then I forget to do that. I don't have my extra tabs. Well, if I read a part that I like, I'm just going to have to print it into my memory because I don't have my tabs. Oh, well. I know I'm starting a bit early, but it's only like 5 minutes early, so it's okay. We'll be fine. And I want to start because I heard that there was we're reading 33 through 37, I think. 33 through 37. Did you watch of course I did. Of course I watched the trailer for Percy Jackson. No, we haven't started yet, Nico, you're good. Of course I watched the trailer for Percy Jackson. I eat, sleep, breathe those books. Yes. And I cried. Y'all have no idea. Okay, so Percy Jackson was the first film, was the first like book turned into film experience that I had. And so going to the movies and watching the train wreck that was the Percy Jackson movies, I left that theater feeling like, what did I just watch? Because it wasn't anything to do with Percy Jackson. Anyway, so when I watched the teaser, and it was literally like he was reading from the book, y'all. From the book! I'm so excited. I think all the characters were cast literally so just beautifully. And I think they're going to do amazing with this show. I really do. I think they're going to do amazing. And it's going to be, I'm really excited about it. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Sorry, I'm having like a slight sugar rush because I went and I had some crepes for brunch, but I'm having like a sugar rush, so I'm gonna like crash probably in the middle of this live, but it's okay. We're good. I had a mimosa. I feel good, and then I went and got me some McDonald's because I was still hungry, so we're good. Okay, chapter 33. I don't remember what happened. Of the locations of Morath's armies, they have moved into position. Aid to the north is now impossible, and they stand poised to strike Ilby. Oh, okay, yeah. So we just found out that Ilby's in deep shit. So, chapter 33. Ilby has no standing army, Aelin said, feeling the blood drain from her face. There's nothing and no one to fight after the spring, save for rebel militia bands. Rowan said to Rolf, "Do you have exact numbers?" "No," the captain said. The news was given only as a warning, to keep any shipments away from the Avery. I wanted their opinions, a nod of the chin toward the cadre, for handling it, though I suppose I should have invited you too, since they seem intent on telling you my business. None of them deigned to respond. Aelin scanned that line of armies. Rowan said, "How fast do they move?" "The legions departed Morath nearly 3 weeks ago," Gavriel supplied. "They moved faster than any army I've ever seen." The timing of it. No. It couldn't be because of Ilium, because she taunted him. Oh, Jesus, it's an extermination, Rolf said baldly. She closed her eyes, swallowing hard. Even the captain didn't dare speak. Rowan slid a hand along her lower back, a silent comfort. He knew, was piecing it together too. She opened her eyes, that line burning into her vision, her heart, and said, "It's a message. For me." She unfurled her fist, gazing at the scar there. "Why attack Ilwy, though?" Fenris asked. "And why move into position but not sack it?" She couldn't say the words aloud. that she'd brought this upon Ilwi by mocking Erwin, because he knew who Selena Sardathian had cared for, and he wanted to break her spirit, her heart, by showing her what his armies could do, what they would do, whenever he now felt like it. Not Terrasen, but to the kingdom of the friend she'd loved so dearly. The kingdom she had sworn to protect, to save. Rowan said, "We have personal ties to Ilwi. He knows it matters to her." Fenris's eyes lingered on her, scanning, but Gavriel, voice steady, said, "Erwin now holds everything south of the Avery, save for this archipelago, and even here he has a foothold in the dead end." Aelin stared at the map, at the space that now seemed so small to the north. To the west, the vast expanse of the wastes spread beyond the mountainous continental divide, and her gaze snagged on a small name along the western coast, Briarcliff. The name clanged through her, shuddering her awake, and she realized they'd been talking, debating how much an army might move so quickly over the terrain. She rubbed her temple, staring at that speck on the map, considering the life debt owed to her. Her gaze dragged down, south, to the Red Desert, where another life debt, many life debts, waited for her to claim them. Aelin realized they had asked her something, but she didn't care to figure it out as she said quietly to Rolf, "You're going to give me your armada. You're going to arm it with those fire lances I know you've ordered, and you will ship any extras to the Mycenaean fleet when they arrive." Silence. Rolf barked a laugh and sat again. "Like hell I am." He waved that tattooed hand over the map, the waters inked on it churning and changing in some pattern she wondered if only he could read, a pattern she needed him to be able to read, to find that lock. "This just shows how utterly outmatched you are," he chewed over her words. "The Mycenaean fleet is a little more than a myth, a bedside tale. Aelin looked to the hilt of Rolf's sword, to the inn itself and his ship anchored just outside. "You are the heir of the Mycenaean people," Aelin said, "and I have come to claim the debt you owe my bloodline on that account, too." Rolf did not move, did not blink. "Or were all the sea dragons references from some personal fetish?" Aelin asked. "The Mycenaeans are gone," Rolf said flatly. "I don't think so. I think they've been hiding here, in the Dead Islands, for a long, long time, and you somehow managed to claw your way back to power." "What the fuck?" The three Fae males were glancing between them. Aelin said to Rolf, "I've liberated Ilium from Ardalan. I took back the city, your ancient home, for you, for the Mycenaeans. It is yours if you dare to claim your people's inheritance." Rolf's hand shook slightly. He fisted it, tucking it beneath the table. She allowed a flicker of her magic to rise to the surface then, allowed the gold in her eyes to glow like bright flame. Gavriel and Fenris straightened as her power filled the room, filled the city. The word key between her breasts began thrumming, whispering. She knew there was nothing human, nothing mortal on her face. Knew it because Rolf's golden brown skin had paled to a sickly sheen. She closed her eyes and loosed a breath. The tendril of power she'd gathered rippled away in an invisible line. The world shuddered in its wake. A city bell chimed once, twice, in its force. Even the waters in the bay shivered as it swept past and out into the archipelago. I feel like I'm not saying that word right. When Aelin opened her eyes, the mortality had returned. "What the rutting hell was that?" Rolf at last demanded. Fenris and Gavriel became very interested in the map before them. Rowan said smoothly, "Milady has to release bits of her power daily, or it can consume her." Despite herself, despite what she'd done, she decided she wanted Rowan to call her Milady at least once every day. Rowan continued on, pressing Rolf about the moving army. The pirate lord, who Lysandra had confirmed weeks ago was Mycenaean thanks to Arobyn's own spying on his business partners, seemed barely able to speak, thanks to the offer she'd laid out for him. But Aelin merely waited. Adian and Lysandra arrived after some time, and her cousin only spared Gavriel a passing glance as he stood over the map and fell into that general's mindset, demanding details large and minute. But Gavriel silently stared up at his son, watching her cousin's eyes dart over the map, listening to the sound of his voice as if it were a song he was trying to memorize. Lysandra drifted to the window, monitoring the bay, like she could see that ripple Aelin had sent out into the world. The shifter had told Adian by now of why he had truly gone to Ilium. Or why they had truly gone to Ilium. Not only to see Brannon, but not only to save its people, but for this. She and the shifter had hatched the plan during the long night watches together on the road, considering all pitfalls and benefits. Dorian strolled in 10 minutes later, his eyes going straight to Aelin. He'd felt it too. The king gave a polite greeting to Rolf, then remained silent as he was briefed on the positioning of Erwin's armies. Then he slid into a seat beside her while the other males continued discussing supply routes and weapons, being led in circle after circle by Rowan. Dorian just gave her an unreadable glance and folded his ankle over a knee. The clock struck 11, and Aelin rose to her feet in the middle of whatever Fenris had been saying about various armor, and Rolf possibly investing in the ore to supply the demand. Silence fell again. Aelin said to Rolf, "Thank you for your hospitality," and then turned away. She made it a step before he demanded, "That's it?" She looked over her shoulder, Rowan approaching her side. Aelin let a bit of the flame rise to the surface. "Ugh!" "Yes, if you will not give me an armada, if you will not unite what is left of the Mycenaeans and return to Terrason, then I'll find someone else who will. There is no one else." Again, her eyes went to the map on his table. "You once said I would pay for my arrogance, and I did, many times. But Sam and I took on your entire city and fleet and destroyed it, all for 200 lives you deemed less than human. So perhaps I've been underestimating myself. Perhaps I do not need you, after all." She turned again, and Rolf sneered. I didn't read all that he said, but I read enough. I just got hot, and not in a good way. Y'all, he better not say anything about my baby. I'm being so dead ass. She turned again, and Rolf sneered. "Did Sam die still pinning after you, or did you finally stop treating him like filth?" Why would he say that? Why would he say that? I'm gonna kill him. Why would he say that? Oh my god. Why would he say that? There was a choking sound, and a slam and rattle of glasses. She looked slowly to find Rowan with his hand around Rolf's neck. The captain pressed onto the map, the figures scattered everywhere, Rowan's snarling teeth close to ripping off Rolf's ear. Okay, that got him some brownie points. No, that definitely did. Okay, dang! Okay, he defended Sam. I love him. Fenris smirked a bit. See, I want to tab this scene and I can't. God. I told you to choose your words carefully, Rolf. Adian seemed to be doing his best to ignore his father as he said to the captain, "Nice to meet you." Then he strolled toward where Aelin, Dorian, and Lysandra waited by the door. Rowan leaned in, murmuring something in Rolf's ear that made him blanch, then shoved him a bit harder into the table before stalking for Aelin. Rolf set his hands on the table, pushing up to bark some surely stupid words at them, but went rigid, as if some pulse thrashed through his body. He turned his hands over, fitting the edges of his palms together. His eyes lifted, but not to her, to the windows. What? Oh, this makes me feel bad though, because I just rated him. I just said that he would be number 5 on my list, and what he said made him deserve that number 3 spot. Now I feel bad. Aw, sorry, Rowan. But he defended Sam. I can't hate anyone that defends Sam. To the windows, to the bells that had begun ringing and the twin watchtowers flanking the mouth of the bay. What's going on? The frantic pealing set the streets beyond them halting, silencing. Each bleat's meaning was clear enough. Rolf's face went pale. Aelin watched as black, darker than the ink that had been etched there, spread across his fingers, to his palms. Black such as only the Val could bring. Oh, there was no doubt now that the map worked. She said to her companions, "We leave. Now." Rolf was already storming toward her, toward the door. He said nothing as he flung it open, striding onto the quay, where his first mate and quartermaster were already sprinting for him. Aelin shut the door behind Rolf and surveyed her friends, and the cadre. It was Fenris who spoke first, rising to his feet and watching through the window as Rolf and his men rushed out. "Remind me never to get on your bad side," Dorian said quietly. "If that force reaches this town, these people—" "It won't," Aelin said, meeting Rowan's stare. Pine-green eyes held her own. "Show them why you're my bloodsworn," she silently told him. A hint of a wicked smile, Rowan turned to them. "Let's go." "Go?" Fenris blurted, pointing to the window. "Where?" "There's a boat," Adian said, "anchored on the other side of the island." He inclined his head toward Lysandra. "You'd think they'd notice a skiff being tugged out to sea by a shark last night, but—" The door banged open and Rolf's towering figure filled it. "You." Aelin put a hand on her chest. "Me? You sent the magic out there. You summoned them." She barked a laugh, pushing off the table. "If I ever learned such a useful talent, I'd use it for summoning my allies, I think. Or the Mycenians, since you seem so adamant they don't exist." She glanced over her shoulder. The sky was still clear. "Good luck," she said, stepping around him. Dorian blurted, "What?" Aelin looked to the King of Ardalan. The King of Ardalan over. "This isn't our battle, and I won't sacrifice my kingdom's fate over a skirmish with the Valg. If you have any sense, you won't either." Rolf's face contorted with wrath, even as fear, deep and true, shone in his eyes. She took a step toward the chaotic streets, but paused, turning to the pirate lord. "I suppose the cadre will be coming with me, too, since they're now my allies." Silently, Fenris and Gavriel approached, and she could have sighed with relief that they did so without question, that Gavriel was willing to do whatever it took to stay near his son. Rolf hissed, "You think withholding your assistance will sway me into helping you?" But far beyond the bay, between the distant, humped islands, a cloud of darkness gathered. "I meant what I said, Rolf. I can do fine without you, Armada or no, Mycenians or no. And this island has now become dangerous for my cause." She inclined her head toward the sea. "I'll offer a prayer to Mala for you." She patted the hilt of Goldrin. "A bit of advice, from one professional criminal to the other. Cut off their heads. It's the only way to kill them. Unless you burn them alive, but I bet most would jump ship and swim to shore before your flaming arrows can do much damage." "And what of your idealism? What of that child who stole 200 slaves from me? You'd leave the people of this island to perish?" "Yes," she said simply. "I told you, Rolf, that Endeavor taught me some things." Rolf swore. "Do you think Sam would I need a tissue, y'all. I can't stand him bringing Sam up like this. I really cannot. He needs to get my baby's name out his fucking mouth. Hold on, I need a tissue. Sorry. I'm still getting over whatever the fuck I had, like, last week. Okay, better. "Do you think Sam would stand for this?" "Sam is dead," she said, "because men like you and Erebin have power. But Erebin's reign is now over." She smiled at the darkening horizon. "Seems like yours might end rather soon as well." "You bitch," Rowan snarled, taking all of a step before Rolf flinched away. Rushing footsteps sounded, then Rolf's quartermaster filled the doorway. He panted as he rested a hand on the threshold, the other gripping the sea dragon-shaped pommel of his sword. "We're knee-deep in shit." No shit. Aelin paused. Rolf's face tightened. "How bad?" the captain asked. He wiped the sweat from his brow. 8 warships teeming with soldiers. At least 100 on each. More on the lower levels I couldn't see. They're flanked by 2 sea wyverns, all moving so fast that it's like storm winds carry them. Aelin cut a glance at Rowan. "How quickly can we get to the boat?" Rolf was gazing at the few ships in his harbor, his face deathly pale. At shipbreaker out in the bay, the chain currently beneath the calm surface. Fenris, seeing the captain's stare, observed, Those sea wyverns will snap that chain. Get your people off this island. Use every skiff and sloop you have and get them out. Rolf slowly turned to Aelin, his sea-green eyes simmering with hate and resignation. Is this an attempt to call my bluff? Aelin toyed with the end of her braid. No, it's convenient timing, but no. Rolf surveyed them all, the power that could level this island if they chose. His voice was hoarse as he at last spoke. I want to be admiral. I want this entire archipelago. I want Ilium. And when this war is over, I want Lord in front of my name, as it was before my ancestors' names long ago. What of my payment? Aelin surveyed him in turn, the entire room deathly quiet compared to the chaos of outside. For every Morath ship you sack, you can keep whatever gold and treasure is aboard it, but weapons and ammunition go to the front. I'll give you land, but no royal titles beyond those of Lord of Ilium and King of the Archipelago. If you bear any offspring, I will recognize them as your heirs, as I would any children Dorian might bear. Dorian nodded gravely. Ardalan will recognize you and your heirs, and this land is yours. Rolf ground out. You send those bastards down to the inky black, and my fleet is yours. I cannot guarantee the Mycenians will rise, though. We've been scattered too far and too long. Only a small number live here, and they will not stir without proper motivation. He glanced toward the bar, as if he'd expected to see someone behind it. But Aelin held out her hand, smiling faintly. Leave that to me. Tattooed skin met scarred flesh as Rolf shook her hand, hard enough to break bones, but she did it right back, sent a little flame searing into his fingers. He hissed, pulling back his hand, and Aelin grinned. Welcome to Her Majesty's army, Privateer Rolf. She gestured to the open door. Shall we? This bitch. I didn't want to say Sam is dead, but I had to. The hardest thing about this, about reading things like this or things like that, is I have to say it, not that I have to, but like I want to read it as she says it, like her tone that I know she's using when she's not crying when she's saying Sam is dead, so I can't cry either. So it's if Aelin isn't crying over Sam anymore, then I definitely should not be. So I'm gonna toughen up a little bit. Aelin was insane, Dorian realized. Brilliant and wicked, but insane. And perhaps the greatest, most unremorseful liar he'd ever encountered. He'd felt her summons sweep through the world, felt the fire hum against his skin. There was no mistaking who it belonged to, and there was no mistaking that it had gone right to the dead end, where the forces dwelling there would know there was one person alive with that kind of flame at her disposal, and track the magic back here. He didn't know what had triggered it, why she'd chosen now, but Rowan had informed Aelin how the Valg haunted Rolf, how he had this city watched day and night, terrified of their return. So Aelin had used it to her advantage. The Mycenians, holy gods, they were little more than a bedtime story and cautionary tale, but here they were, carefully hidden away, until Aelin had smoked them out. And as the pirate lord and queen of Terrasen shook hands and she grinned at Rolf, Dorian realized perhaps he could do with a bit more wickedness and insanity too. This war would not be won on smiles and manners. It would be won by a woman willing to gamble with an entire island full of people to get what she needed to save them all. A woman whose friends were equally willing to play along, to rip their souls to shreds if it meant saving the greater population. They knew the weight of the lives panicking around them if they gambled wrong. Aelin perhaps more than anyone else. Aelin and Rolf Oh, it's raining. Aelin and Rolf stalked through the open tavern doorway and into the street beyond. Behind him, Fenris let out a low whistle. God help you, Rowan. That woman is... Dorian didn't wait to hear the rest as he followed the pirate and the queen into the street, Adian and Lysandra trailing. Fenris kept at a distance from the others, but Gavriel remained close, his gaze still fixed on his son. God, they looked so much alike. Moved alike. The lion and the wolf. Rolf barked to his men waiting in a line before them. Every ship that can bear men sails now. He rattled off orders, delegating his men to various ships long bereft of crew to run them. including his own, while Aelin stood there, hands braced on her hips, watching them all. She said to the captain, "What's your fastest ship?" He pointed at his own. She held his stare, and Dorian waited for the wild, reckless plan, but she said without looking at any of them, "Rowan, Lysandra, Fenris, and Gavriel, you're with me. Adian, you get on the northern watchtower and man the mounted harpoon. Any ship gets too close to the chain, you blast a hole through their goddamn side." Dorian stiffened as she at last addressed him, seeing the orders already in her eyes. He opened his mouth to object, but Aelin said simply, "This battle is no place for a king." "And it's one for a queen?" There was no amusement, nothing but icy calm as she handed him a sword he hadn't realized she'd been carrying at her side. Damaris. Goldrin was still strapped across her back, its ruby glowing like a living ember as she said, "One of us has to live, Dorian. You take the southern watchtower, stay at the base, and get your magic ready. Any forces that try to cross the chain, you take them out. Not with steel, but magic." He fastened Damaris to his sword belt, its weight foreign. "And what are you going to do?" he demanded, as if in answer his power writhed in his gut, like an asp curling to strike. Aelin glanced at Rowan, at his tattooed hand. "Rolf, get whatever iron chains you have left from your slave-mongering. We're going to need them. For her. For Rowan. As a check against their magic. If it got out of control. Because Aelin was going to sail that ship right into the heart of the enemy fleet and blow them all out of the water." Okay, chapter 34. She was a liar, and a murderer, and a thief, and Aelin had a feeling she'd be called much worse by the end of this war. But as that unnatural darkness gathered on the horizon, she wondered if she might have bitten off more than she and all her fanged friends could chew. She did not give her fear an inch of space, did not do anything but let black fire ripple through her. Securing this alliance was only part of it. The other part, the bigger part, was the message, not to Morath, but to the world, to any potential allies watching this continent, contemplating if it was indeed a lost cause. Today, her message would thunder across the realms. She was not a rebel princess, shattering enemy castles and killing kings. She was a force of nature, and she was a calamity and a commander of immortal warriors of legend. And if those allies did not join with her, she wanted them to think of today, of what she would do, and wonder if they might find her on their shores, in their harbors, one day too. They had not come 10 years ago. She wanted them to know she had not forgotten it. Rolf finished barking orders to his men and rushed aboard the Sea Dragon, Adian and Dorian hurtling for horses to carry them to their respective watchtowers. Aelin turned to Lysandra, the shifter calmly monitoring them all. Aelin said quietly, "Do you know what I need you to do?" Lysandra's moss-green eyes were bright as she nodded. Aelin did not allow herself to embrace the shifter. She did not allow herself to so much as touch her friend's hand, not with Rolf watching, not with the citizens of this town watching, the lost Mycenaeans among them. So Aelin merely said, "Good hunting." Fenris let out a choked sound, as if he realized what she had indeed demanded of the shapeshifter. Beside him, Gavriel was too busy staring after Adian, who hadn't so much as glanced at his father before fastening his shield and sword across his back, mounting a sorry-looking mare and galloping for the watchtower. Aelin said to Rowan, the wind already dancing in the silver hair of her warrior prince, "We move now." So they did. People were panicking in the streets as the dark force took shape on the horizon, massive ships with black sails, converging on the bay as if they were indeed carried on a preternatural wind. But Aelin, Lysandra close to her, stalked for the towering sea dragon, Rowan and his two companions falling into step behind them. People halted and gawked while they ascended the gangway, securing and rearranging their weapons, knives and swords, Rowan's hatchet gleaming while he hooked it at his side, a bow and quiver full of black-feathered arrows that Aelin assumed Fenris could fire with deadly accuracy, and more blades. As they prowled onto the gently rocking deck of the Sea Dragon, the wood meticulously polished, Aelin supposed that together they formed a walking armory. Gavriel had no sooner set foot on board than the gangway was hauled up by Rolf's men. The others, seated on benches flanking the deck, lifted oars. Two men to a seat. Sorry, y'all. Rowan jerked his chin at Gavriel and Fenris, and the two wordlessly went to join the men, his cadre falling into rank and rhythms that were older than some kingdoms. Rolf stalked out a door that no doubt led to his chambers, two men behind him bearing enormous iron chains. Aelin strode for them. Anchor them to the mainmast, and make sure there's enough room for them to reach right here. She pointed to where she now stood in the heart of the deck. Enough space clear of everyone, enough space for her and Rowan to work. Rolf barked in order to begin rowing, glancing once at Fenris and Gavriel, who each manned an oar themselves, teeth bared as they threw their considerable strength into the motion. Slowly, the ship began moving, the others around them stirring as well. But they had to be out of the bay first, had to get past the boundary of shipbreaker. Rolf's men looped the chains around the mast, leaving enough length to reach Aelin. Iron would provide a bite, an anchor to remind her who she was, what she was. Iron would keep her tethered when the sheer vastness of her magic, of Rowan's magic, threatened to sweep her away. The sea dragon inched over the harbor, the call and grunting of Rolf's men as they rowed drowning out the din of the town behind them. She flicked a glance toward either watchtower to see Dorian arrive, then Adian's golden hair racing up the outer spiral staircase to the enormous mounted harpoon at the top. Her heart strained for a moment as she flashed between now and a time when she'd seen Sam running up. When she'd seen Sam running up those same stairs, not to defend this town, but to wreck it. Okay. She shook off the icy grip of memory and turned to Lysandra, standing at the deck rail, watching her cut. I'm sorry. No! We had done so good. No! We had done so good. Oh, God. Okay. It's okay. Okay, I can't think about it. If I think about it too much, I'm gonna start crying. So, we're okay. It's okay. Momentary lapse. Ugh. We're good. She shook off the icy grip of memory and turned to Lysandra, standing at the deck rail, watching her cousin as well. Now, even Rolf paused his ordering at the word. Lysandra gracefully sat on the board wooden railing, pivoting her legs over the side, and dropped into the water. Rolf's men rushed to the rail. People in boats flanking them did the same, spotting the woman plunge into the vivid blue. But it was not a woman who came out. Below, deep down, Aelin could make out the glow and shift and spread. Men began cursing, but Lysandra kept growing and growing beneath the surface, along the sandy harbor floor. Faster the men rowed, but the ship's speed was nothing compared to the speed of the creature that emerged from the waves. A broad, jade-green snout, peppered with shredding white teeth, huffed a mighty breath and arced back under the water, revealing a flash of a massive head and cunning eyes as she disappeared. Some men screamed. Rolf braced a hand on the wheel. His first mate, the sea dragon sword, freshly polished at his side, dropped to his knees. Lysandra dove, and she let them see the long, powerful body that broke the surface bit by bit as she plunged down, her jade scales gleaming like jewels in the blinding midday sun. See the legends straight from their prophecies. The Mycenians would only return when the sea dragons did. And so Aelin had ensured that one appeared right in their gods-damned harbor. Holy gods, Fenris muttered from where he rowed. Indeed, that was about the only reaction Aelin could muster as the sea dragon dove down deep, then swam ahead. For those were mighty fins, wings that Lysandra spread beneath the water, tucking in her small front arms and back legs, her massive spiked tail acting as a rudder. Damn! Some of Rolf's men were murmuring, a dragon to defend our own ship, the legend of our fathers. Indeed. Rolf's face was pale as he stared toward where Lysandra had vanished into the blue, still clutching the whale as if it'd keep him from falling. 2 sea wyverns against 1 sea dragon. For all the fire in the world would not work beneath the sea, and if they were to stand a chance decimating those ships, there could be no interference from beneath the surface. "Come on, Lysandra," Aelin breathed, and sent a prayer to Themis, the goddess of wild things, to keep the shifter swift and unfaltering beneath the waves. Y'all better not touch her. I'm being so dead-ass. Aedion chucked off the shield from his back and slammed into the seat before the giant iron harpoon, its length perhaps a hand taller than him, its head bigger than his own. There were only 3 spears. He'd have to make his shots count. Across the bay, he could just make out the king taking up a position along the battlement on the lowest level of the tower. In the bay itself, Rolf's ship rowed closer and closer to the shipbreaker's lowered chain. Aedion stomped on one of the 3 operating pedals that allowed him to pivot the mounted launcher, gripping the handles on either side that positioned the spear into place. Carefully, precisely, he aimed the harpoon toward the very outer edge of the bay, where the 2 branches of the island leaned toward each other to provide a narrow passage into the harbor. Waves broke just beyond, a reef, good for breaking ships against, and no doubt where Rolf would plant his ship, in order to fool Morath's fleet into skewering themselves on it. "What the hell is that?" one of the sentries manning the gunner breathed, pointing toward the bay waters. A mighty, long shadow swept under the water, ahead of the sea dragon, faster than the ship, faster than a dolphin. Its long, serpentine body soared through the sea, carried on wings that might have also been fins. Aedion's heart stopped dead. "It's a sea dragon," he managed to say. Well, at least he now knew what secret form Lysandra had been working on, and why Aelin had insisted on getting inside Brandon's temple, not just to see the king, not just to reclaim the city for the Mycenaeans and Terrasen, but for Lysandra to study the life-size, detailed carvings of those sea dragons, to become a living myth. The 2 of them, oh, those crafty, scheming devils, a queen of legends indeed. How? The sentry turned toward the others, babbling amongst themselves. "It's gonna defend us?" Lysandra approached Shipbreaker, still lowered under the surface, twirling and arcing, banking along rocks as if getting a feel for her new form, getting a feel for it in whatever little time they had. "Yes," Aedion breathed, as terror flooded his veins. "Yes, she is." The water was warm and quiet and ageless, and she was a scaled shadow that set the jewel-colored fish darting into their coral homes. She was a soaring menace through the water that made the white birds bobbing on the surface scatter into flight as they sensed her passing below. Sunbeams streamed in pillars through the water, and Lysandra, in the small part of her that remained human, felt as if she were gliding through a temple of light and shadow. But there, far out, carried on echoes of sound and vibration, she felt them. Even the larger predators of these waters flitted off, taking the open seas beyond the islands. Not even the promise of waters stained red could keep them in the path of the 2 forces about to collide. Ahead, the mighty links of Shipbreaker sagged into the deep, like the colossal necklace of some goddess leaning down to drink the sea. She had been reading about them, the long-forgotten and long-dead sea dragons, but at Aelin's behest, because her friend had known that strong-arming Rolf with the Mycenaeans would only get them so far, but if they were to wield the power of myth instead, its people might rally around it. And with a home to finally offer them, among these islands and in Terrasen, Lysandra had studied the carvings of the sea dragons at the temple, once Aelin had burned away the dirt on them. Her magic had filled in the gaps the carvings didn't know, like the nostrils that picked apart each scent of the current, the ears that unraveled varying layers of sound. Lysandra swept for the reef just beyond the parted lips of the island. She'd have to retract the wings, but here she would make her stand. Here she would have to unleash every wild instinct, yielding the part of her that felt and cared. These beasts, however they were made, were only that. Beasts. Animals. They would not fight with morals and codes. They would not fight to the death and fight for they would fight to the death and fight for survival. There would be no mercy, no compassion. She would have to fight as they did. She had done so before. had turned feral, not just that day the glass castle had shattered, but the night she'd been captured and those men had tried to take Evangeline. This would be no different. Lysandra dug her bone-shredding, curved talons into the reef shelf to hold her position against the current's nudging, and peered into the silent blue stretching endlessly ahead. So she began her death vigil. I feel like I would have fallen in love with Rowan. I don't know. I ask myself that question all the time. Like, if I hadn't met Sam first, would I have fallen in love with Rowan? I honestly don't know. Because the reason I didn't like him wasn't because of Sam. Like, it was part of it, but like a lot of it had to do with just like his personality and like him being like really mean and like ugly and like in a way that I don't like. Yeah, it had a lot to just do with him. I just didn't like him. I was fine with Dorian and I was okay with Kale. I just didn't like Rowan at the beginning. I didn't like his personality very much. But yeah. Chapter 35. Wait, what are we reading until? We're reading through 37, right? Valid criticism of him. It's valid criticism. I just didn't like him very much. Okay, chapter 35. Perched on the rail of the sea dragon, gripping the rope ladder flowing in the looming mast, Aelin savored the cooling spindrift that sprayed her face as the ship plowed through the waves. Once the ship was clear of the others, Rowan had let his winds fill its sails, setting the sea dragon flying toward the mammoth chain. It was hard not to look back as they passed over the submerged chain, and then Shipbreaker began to rise from the water, sealing them out of the bay, where Rolf's other ships would wait safely behind the chain's line to guard the town now silently watching them. If all went well, they would only need this boat, she told Rolf, and if it went badly, then his ships wouldn't make a difference anyway. Tightly grasping the rope, Aelin leaned out, the vibrant blue and white below passing in a swift blur. Not too fast, she told Rowan. Don't waste your strength, you barely slept last night. He just leaned in to nip at her ear before sliding onto Gavriel's bench to concentrate. He was still there, his power letting the men cease their rowing and prepare for what swept toward them. Aelin again looked ahead, toward those black sails blotting the horizon. The word key at her chest murmured in response. She could feel them. Her magic could taste their corruption on the wind. No sign of Lysandra, but she was out there. The sun was blinding on the waves as Rowan's magic slowed, bringing them into a steady glide toward the two peaks of the island that curved toward each other. It was time. Aelin swung off the railing, boots thudding on the soaked wood of the deck. So many eyes turned to her, to the chain spread across the main deck. Rolf stalked toward her, descending from the raised quarterdeck, where he'd been manning the wheel himself. She picked up a heavy iron chain, wondering who it previously held. Rowan rose to his feet in a steady, graceful movement. He reached her when Rolf did. The captain demanded, "What now?" Aelin jerked her chin toward the ships near enough to make out figures crammed onto the various decks. Many, many figures. We draw them in as close as we can. When you see the whites of their eyes, you shout at us. Okay, when you see the whites of their eyes. Someone fucking... Rowan added. And when you lay anchor off the starboard side, swing us around. Why? Rolf asked as Rowan helped her fasten the manacle around her wrist. She balked at the iron, her magic twisting. Rowan gripped her chin between his thumb and forefinger, making her meet his unflinching gaze, even as he said to Rolf, "Because we don't want the masts in the way when we open fire. They seem like a rather important part of the ship." Rolf growled and stalked off. Rowan's fingers slid to cup her jaw, his thumb brushing her cheek. "We draw out our power, slow and steady." "I know." He angled his head, brows lifting. A half-smile curved his sinful mouth. "You've been spiraling down into your power for days now, haven't you?" She nodded. It had taken most of her focus, had been such an effort to stay in the present, to stay active and aware while she was burrowing down and down, drawing up as much of her power as she could without attracting any notice. "I didn't want to take any chances here." Not if you were drained from saving Dorian. I've recovered, I'll have you know. So this morning's little display, a way to take off the power's full edge, she said wryly, and make Rolf piss himself. He chuckled and released her face to pass her the other manacle. She hated its ancient, hideous touch on her skin, on his, as she clamped it around his tattooed wrist. Hurry, Rolf said from where he'd returned to his spot at the wheel. Indeed, the ships were gaining on them. No sign of those sea wyverns, though the shifter also remained out of sight. Rowan palmed his hunting knife, the steel bright in the blazing sun. High noon. Precisely why she'd gone into Rolf's office nearly 2 hours beforehand. She'd practically rung the dinner bell for the host in the dead end. She'd gambled that they wouldn't wait until nightfall, but they apparently feared the wrath of their master if she slipped their nets more than any feared the light itself, or were too stupid to realize Mala's heir would be at her most powerful. Do you want to do the honors, or should I? Rowan said. Fenris and Gavriel had risen to their feet, blades out as they had monitored from a safe distance. Aelin held out her free hand, her palm scarred, and took the knife from him. A quick slice had her skin stinging, warm blood heating her seawater sticky skin. Rowan had the knife a heartbeat later, and the scent of his blood filled her nose, set her senses on edge, but she extended her bloodied palm. Her magic swirled into the world with it, crackling in her veins, her ears. She reined in the urge to tap her foot on the ground, to roll her shoulders. Slow, Rowan repeated, as if sensing the hair trigger that her power was now on, and steady. His shackled arm slid around her waist to hold her to him. I'll be with you every step of the way. She lifted her head to study his face, the harsh planes and the curving tattoo. He leaned in to brush a kiss to her mouth, and as his lips met hers, he joined their bleeding palms. Magic jolted through her, ancient and wicked and cunning, and she arched against him, knees buckling at his cataclysmic power. As his cataclysmic power roared into her, all anyone on deck saw, she knew, was two lovers embracing. But Aelin tunneled down into her power, felt him doing the same with his, felt every ounce of ice and wind and lightning go slamming from him into her, and when it reached her, the core of his power yielded to her own, melted and became embers and wildfire, became the molten heart of the earth, shaping the world and birthing new lands. That's dramatic. That's a bit dramatic. Deeper and deeper she went. Aelin had a vague sense of the ship rocking beneath them, felt the faint bite of the iron as it rejected her magic, felt the presence of Fenris and Gavriel flickering around them like candles. It had been months since she'd drawn from so deep into the abyss of her power. During the time she'd trained with Rowan and Wendelin, her power's limit had been self-imposed, but then that day with the Valg, she'd broken through it, had discovered an entire hidden level beneath. She had drawn from it when she'd encircled Doranel with her power, had taken a whole day to tunnel that far, to draw up what she needed. Aelin had begun this descent 3 days ago. She'd expected it to stop after the first day, to hit that bottom she'd sensed once before. She had not. And now with Rowan's power joining hers, Rowan's arm still held her tightly against him, and she had the distant, murky sensation of his coat scratching lightly against her face, of the hardness of the weapon strap beneath, the scent of him washing over her, soothing her. She was a stone plunked into the sea of her power, their power, down, and down, and down. There was the bottom, the ash-lined bottom, the pit of a dormant crater. Only the feeling of her own feet against the wood deck kept her from sinking into the ash, learning what might slumber beneath it. Her magic whispered to start digging through that ash and silt, but Rowan's grip tightened on her waist. Easy, he murmured in her ear. Easy. Still more of his power flowed into her, wind and ice churning with her power, eddying into a maelstrom. Close now, Rolf warned from nearby, from another world. Aim for the middle of the fleet, Rowan ordered her. Send the flanking ships scattering into the reef, where they'd found her, leaving any survivors to be picked off with arrows shot by Fenris and Rolf's men. Rowan had to be alert then. watching the approaching force. She could feel them, feel her magic's hackles rise in response to the blackness gathering beyond the horizon of her consciousness. Almost in range, Rolf called. She began pulling up, dragging the abyss of flame and embers with her. "Steady," Rowan murmured. Higher and higher. Aelin rose, backing toward the sea and sunlight. Here, that sunlight seemed to beckon. To me. Her magic surged for it, for that voice. "Now," Rolf barked, and like a feral beast freed of its leash, her magic erupted. Uh-oh. Oh my god. She'd been doing well, as Rowan had handed over his power to her. She'd balked and bobbed a few times, but she had the descent under control. Even if her power, the well, had gone deeper than before, it was easy to forget she was still growing, that her power would mature with her. And when Rolf shouted "now," Rowan knew he had forgotten to his... What? Rowan knew he had forgotten to his detriment. A pillar of flame that did not burn erupted from Aelin, slamming into the sky, turning the world into red and orange and gold. Aelin was ripped from his arms with the force of it, and Rowan grabbed her hand in a crushing grip, refusing to let her break that line of contact. Men around them stumbled back, falling onto their asses as they gawked upward in terror and wonder. Higher, that column of flame swirled, a maelstrom of death and life and rebirth. "Holy gods," Fenris whispered behind him. Still, Aelin's magic poured into the world. Still, she burned hotter, wilder. Her teeth were gritted, her head arched back as she panted, eyes shut. "Aelin," Rowan warned. The pillar of flame began expanding, laced with blue and turquoise, flame that could melt bone, crack the earth. Too much. He had given her too much, and she had delved too deep into her power. Through the flames encasing them, Rowan glimpsed the frantic enemy fleet, now hurling themselves into motion to flee, to get out of range. Aelin's ongoing display was not for them, because there was no escape, not with the powers she dragged up with her. The display was for the others, for the city watching them, for the world to know she was no mere princess playing with pretty embers. "Aelin," Rowan said again, trying to tug on that bond between them, but there was nothing. Only the gaping maw of some immortal, ancient beast, a beast that had opened an eye, a beast that spoke in the tongue of 1,000 worlds. Ice flooded his veins. She was swearing the... Oh, shit. She was wearing the word key! That's why! Aelin. But Rowan felt it then. Felt that bottom of her power crack open as if the beast within that word key stomped its foot, and ash and crusted rock crumbled away beneath it, and revealed a roiling, molten core of magic beneath, as if it were the fiery heart of Mala herself. Aelin plunged into that power, bathed in it. Rowan tried to move, tried to scream at her to stop, but Rolf, eyes wide with what could only be terror and awe, roared at her. "Open fire." She heard that, and as violently as it had pierced the sky, that pillar of fire shot down, shot back into her, coiling and wrapping inside herself, fusing into a kernel of power so hot it sizzled into him, searing his very soul. The flames winked out at the same second she reached into Rowan with burning hands and tore the last remnants of his power from him. Damn! Just as she ripped her hand from his, just as her power and the word key between her breasts merged, Rowan collapsed to his knees, and there was a crack inside his head, as if thunder cleaved through him. As Aelin opened her eyes, he realized it wasn't thunder, but the sound of a door slamming. Her face turned expressionless, cold as the gaps between the stars, and her eyes, turquoise, burned bright, around a core of silver, no hint of gold to be found. What the fuck just happened? Huh? "That's not Aelin," Fenris breathed. A faint smile blossomed on her full mouth, born of cruelty and arrogance, and she examined the iron chain wrapped around her wrist. The iron melted away, molten ore sizzling through the wooden deck and into the dark below. The creature that stared out through Aelin's eyes furled her fingers into a fist. Light leaked through her clenched fingers. Cold white light, tendrils flickered, silver flame. Okay, Nesta. Get away, Gabriel warned him. Get away and don't look. What the fuck? I'm scared! I'm scared! What's going on? Gabriel was indeed on his knees, head bowed and eyes averted. Fenris followed suit. For what gazed at the dark fleet assembled, what had filled his beloved's body, he knew. Some primal instinct, intrinsic part of him knew. Deanna. The god? Rowan whispered. She flicked her eyes to him in question and confirmation, and she said to him, in a voice that was deep and hollow, young and old, every key has a lock. Tell the queen who was promised to retrieve it soon. And for all the... Okay. Okay. The more I read this, the more I see what she took from Fire and Blood and Game of Thrones. Because, yeah. Because, first of all, Bitch Queen, that is used in Fire and Blood to talk about Rhaenyra. They literally say, they call her the Bitch Queen. The queen who was promised, the prince who was promised, the unburnt, like, she really, Game of Thrones left an impact on her, and SJM, she just ran with it. Sorry, every lock has a key, or every key has a lock. Tell the queen who was promised to retrieve... What the fuck is going on? To retrieve it soon. For all the allies in the world shall make no difference if she does not wield the lock, if she does not put those keys back with it. Tell her flame and iron, together bound, merge into silver to learn what must be found. A mere step is all it shall take. Then she looked away again. She said copy and paste. No, really though. And Rowan realized what the power in her hand was. Realized that the flame she would unleash would be so cold it burned. Realized it was the cold of the stars, the cold of stolen light. Not wildfire, but moonfire. Well, one moment she was there, and then she was not. And then she was shoved aside, locked into a box with no key, and the power was not hers. Her body was not hers. Her name was not hers. She could feel the other there, filling her, laughing silently as she marveled at the heat of the sun on her face, at the damp sea breeze coating her lips with salt, at the pain of the hand now healed of its wound. So long... It had been so long since the other had felt such things, felt them wholly and not as something in between and diluted. And those flames, her flames and her beloved's magic, they belonged to the other now. To a goddess who had walked through the temporary gate hanging between her breasts and seized her body as if it were a mask to wear. She had no words, for she had no voice, no self, nothing. And she could only watch as if through a window as she felt the goddess, who had perhaps not protected her, but hunted her the entirety of her life, for this moment, this opportunity, examine the dark fleet ahead. So easy to destroy it, but more life glimmered behind, more life to obliterate, to hear their dying cries with her own ears, to witness firsthand what it was to cease to be in a way that the goddess never could. She watched as her own hand, wreathed in pulsing white flame, began to move from where it had been aimed toward the dark fleet, toward the unprotected city at the heart of the bay. What? What? Time slowed and stretched as her body pivoted toward that town, as her own arm lifted, her fist aimed toward the heart of it. There were people on the docks. What? Some running from the display of fire she'd unleashed moments ago. Her fingers began to unfurl. What the fuck is going on? What the fuck is going on? The word was a roar, a plea, and silver and green flashed in her vision. A name clanged through her as he hurled himself into the path of that fist, that moonfire, not just to save those innocents in the city, but to spare her soul from the agony if she destroyed them all. Rowan, and his face became clear, his tattoo stark in the sun, as that fist full of unimaginable power now opened toward his heart. There was no force in any world that could keep her contained, and Aelin Galathinius remembered her own name as she shattered through the cage that goddess had shoved her into, as she grabbed that goddess by the damn throat and hurled her out, 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 through that gaping hole where she had infiltrated her and sealed it. Aelin snapped into her body, her power. Fire like ice, fire stolen from the stars. Rowan's hair was still moving as he slammed into a stop before her uncoiling fist. Time launched again, full and fast and unrelenting. Aelin had only enough of it to throw herself sideways, to angle that now open fist away from him, pointed anywhere but at him. The ship beneath her, the center and left flank of the dark fleet beyond her, and the outer edge of the island behind it blew apart in a storm of fire and ice. Fire and ice, huh? What the fuck? Chapter 36. There was such quiet beneath the waves, even as the muffled sounds of shouting, of collision, of death echoed toward her. Aelin drifted down, as she had drifted into her power, the weight of the word key around her neck like a millstone. Deanna. She didn't know how, didn't know why. The queen who was promised. Her lungs constricted and burned. Shock. Perhaps this was shock. Down she drifted, trying to feel her way back into her body, her mind. Salt water stung her eyes. A large, strong hand gripped the back of her collar and yanked, hauling her up in tugs, in steady strokes. What had she done? What had she done? Light and air shattered around her, and that hand, grasping her collar, now banded around her chest, tugging her against a hard male body, keeping her head above the roiling waves. "I've got you," said a voice that was not Rowan's. Others. There had been others on the ship, and she had as good as killed them all. "Majesty," the male said, a question in quiet order. Fenris, that was his name. She blinked, and her name, her title, her gutted power came thrashing back into her. The sea and the battle and the threat of Morath swarming. Later she'd deal with that Redding goddess who had thought to use her like some temple priestess. Later, she'd contemplate how she'd shred through every world to find Deanna and make her pay. "Hold on," Fenris said over the chaos now filtering in. The screaming of men, the groaning of breaking things, the crackle of flames. "Don't let go." Before she could remember how to speak, they vanished into nothing. Into darkness that was both solid and insubstantial as it squeezed her tightly. Then they were in the water again, bobbing beneath the waves as she reoriented herself and sputtered for air. He'd moved them, somehow, jumped between distances, judging by the wholly different flotsam? Spinning around them. I don't know what that word said, sorry. Fenris held her against him. His panting labored, as if whatever magic he possessed to leap between short distances took everything he had. He sucked in a deep breath. Then, they were gone again, into that dark, hollow, yet squeezing space. Only a handful of heartbeats passed before the water and sky returned. Fenris grunted, arm tightening around her as he swam with the other toward the shore, shoving aside debris. His breathing was a wet rasp now. Whatever that magic was, it was spent. But Rowan? Where was Rowan? She made a sound that might have been his name, might have been a sob. Fenris panted. "He's on the reef. He's fine." She didn't believe him. Thrashing against the Fey warrior's arm until he released her, she slid into the cold open water and twisted toward where Fenris had been headed. Another small sound cracked from her as she beheld Rowan standing knee-deep in water atop the reef. His arm was already outstretched, even though 30 yards still separated them. Fine, unscathed, alive, and an equally soaked Gavriel stood beside him, facing... Oh gods. Oh God. Blood stained the water. There were bodies everywhere, and Morath's fleet. Most of it was gone, nothing more than black wood splintered across the archipelago and burning bits of canvas and rope. But 3 ships remained. 3 ships now converging on the ruins of the Sea Dragon as it took on water, looming like thunderclouds. "You have to swim," Fenris growled beside her, his sodden golden hair plastered to his head. "Right now, as fast as you can." She whipped her head toward him, blinking away burning seawater. "Swim now," Fenris snapped, canines flashing, and she didn't let herself consider what was prowling beneath them as he grabbed her collar again and practically threw her ahead of him. Aelin didn't wait. She focused on Rowan's outstretched hand as she swam, his face so carefully calm, the commander on a battlefield. Her magic was barren. Her magic was a wasteland, and she had stolen his power from him. Think of that later. Aelin shoved through and ducked under larger bits of debris, past men, Rolf's men, dead in the water. Was the captain among them somewhere? She'd likely killed her first and only human ally in this war, and her only direct path to the lock. And if news of the former spread, faster, Fenris barked. Rowan sheathed his sword, his knees bent. Then he was swimming to her, fast and smooth, cutting between and beneath the waves, the water seeming to part for him. She wanted to growl so she could make it herself, she wanted to growl. She could make it herself, but he reached her, saying nothing before he slipped behind her, guarding with Fenris. And what would he do in the water with no magic, against a gaping maw of a sea wyvern? She ignored the crushing tightness in her chest and hurtled for the reef. Gavriel was now waiting where Rowan had been. Beneath her, the shelf of the coral at last spread, and she nearly sobbed, her muscles trembling as Gavriel crouched so she could reach his outstretched hand. The lion easily hauled her out of the water. Her knees buckled as her boots steadied on the uneven coral heads, but Gavriel kept his grip on her, subtly letting her lean against him. Rowan and Fenris were out a heartbeat later, and the prince instantly was there, hands on her face, slicking back her soaked hair, scanning her eyes. "I'm fine," she rasped, her voice hoarse, from the magic or the goddess or the salt water she'd swallowed. "I'm me." That was good enough for Rowan, who faced the 3 ships now bearing down on them. On her other side, Fenris had doubled over, hands on his knees as he panted. He lifted his head at her gaze, hair dripping, but said to Rowan, "I'm out. We'll have to either wait for it to replenish or swim to shore." Rowan gave him a sharp nod that Aelin interpreted as understanding and thanks, and she glanced behind them. The reef seemed to be an extension of the black, rocky shore behind. But with the tide out, they'd indeed have to swim in spots, have to risk what was beneath the water with Lysandra. There was no sign of wyvern or dragon. Aelin didn't know if that was a good or bad thing. Aelin and the Fey males had made it to the reef and now stood knee-deep in water atop it. Whatever had happened, it had gone horribly wrong. So wrong that Lysandra could have sworn the feral, wild presence who had never once forgotten her had ducked into her long shadow as the world above exploded. She tumbled off the coral, the current cleaving and eddying. Wood and rope and canvas rained onto the surface, some plunging deep. Then bodies and arms and legs. But there were the captain and his first mate thrashing against the flotsam that tangled them, trying to drag them down to the sandy floor. Shaking off her shock, Lysandra swept for them both. Rolf and his man froze at her approach, reaching for weapons at their sides beneath the waves, but she ripped away the debris, surely drowning them, then let herself go still. Let them grab onto her. She didn't have much time. Rolf and his first mate latched onto her legs, clinging like barnacles as she propelled them through the water, past the now scorched ruin. The work of a minute had her depositing them onto a rocky shelf, and she emerged only long enough to gulp down a breath before diving. There were more men struggling in the water. She aimed for them, dodging debris until blood laced the current, and not the puffs that had been staining the water since the ship exploded. Great, roiling clouds of blood, as if massive jaws clamped around a body and squeezed. Lysandra launched forward, mighty tail snapping back and forth, body undulating, racing for the 3 boats bearing down on the survivors. She had to act now, while the wyverns were distracted with glutting themselves. The stench of the black boat reached her even under the waves. as if the dark wood had been soaked in rotted blood. And as she approached the closest ship's fat underbelly, two mighty shapes took form out in the blue. Lysandra felt their attention lock on her the moment she slammed her tail into the hull. Once. Twice. Wood cracked. Muffled shouts reached her from above. She drifted back, uncoiling, and slammed her tail into the hole a third time. Wood tore and ripped into her, peeling away scales, but the damage was done. Water sucked in past her, more and more, tearing through the wood as its death wound grew and grew. She backtracked out of the water's pull, flipping down, down, down as the two wyverns feasting on frantic men paused. Lysandra raced for the next ship, getting the ship sinking. Then their allies could pick off the struggling soldiers one by one as they swam to shore. The second ship was wiser. Spears and arrows whizzed through the water, lancing for her. She dove to the sandy floor, then shot up, aiming for the vulnerable belly of the ship, body bracing for impact. She didn't reach the ship before another impact came. Faster than she could sense, slipping around the side of the ship, the sea wyvern slammed into her. Talons tore and sliced, and she flipped on instinct, whipping her tail so hard that the wyvern went tumbling out into the water. Lysandra lunged back, getting an eyeful of it as it stared her down. Oh, gods. It was nearly double her size. Are you shitting my dick? Made of the deepest blue, its underside white and speckled with paler blue. The body was almost serpentine, wings little more than fins along its sides. Built not for speed or cruising through oceans, but for the long, curving talons, for the maw that was now open, tasting the blood and salt and scent of her, revealing teeth as narrow and sharp as an eel's, hooked teeth, for clamping down and shredding. Behind the wyvern, the other fell into formation. Men were splashing and screaming above her. If she did not get those enemy ships down, Lysandra tucked her wings in tight. She wished she had taken a bigger gulp of air, had filled these lungs to capacity. Fanning her tail in the current, she let the blood still leaking from where the ship's wood had pierced her hide drift to them. She knew the moment it reached the wyverns, the moment they realized she was not just an ordinary animal. And then Lysandra dove. Fast and smooth, she plunged into the deep. If they had been bred for brute killing, then she'd use speed. Lysandra swept beneath them, passing under their dark shadows before they could so much as pivot toward the open ocean. Come on, come on, come on. Like hounds after a hare, they gave chase. There was a sandbar flanked by reefs just to the north. She aimed for it, swimming like hell. One of the wyverns was faster than the other, swift enough that its snapping maw rippled the water at her tail. I can't touch the fucking page! The water became clearer, brighter. Lysandra shot straight for the reef looming up out of the deep, a pillar of life and activity gone still. She curved around the sandbar. The other wyvern appeared in front of her, the second still close on her tail. Clever things. But Lysandra threw herself to the side, into the shallows of the sandbar, and let momentum flip her, over and over. Closer, a woman in STEM! Closer and closer to that narrow spit of sand. She dug her claws in deep, slowing to a stop, sand spraying and crusting her, and had her tail lifted, her body so much heavier out of the water. The wyvern that had thought to catch her off guard by swimming around the other way launched itself out of the water and onto the sandbar. She struck, fast as an asp. Its neck exposed, she clamped her jaws around it and bit down. It bucked, tail slashing, but she slammed her own into its spine, cracking its back as she cracked its neck. Oh. Black blood that tasted of rancid meat flooded her throat. Dropping the dead wyvern, she scanned the turquoise seas, the flotsam, the two remaining ships in harbor. Where was the second wyvern? Where the hell was it? Clever enough, she realized, to know when death was upon it and to seek an easier quarry, for that was a spiked dorsal fin now submerging, heading toward where Aelin, Rowan, Gavriel, and Fenris stood atop the reef, swords out, surrounded by water on all sides. Lysandra plunged into the waves, sand and blood washing away. One more. Just one more wyvern, then she could wreck the boats. The remaining wyvern reached the coral outcropping, gathering speed as if it as if it leaped from the water and swallowed the queen down whole. It didn't get within 20 feet of the surface. Lysandra hurled into it, both of them hitting the coral so hard it shuddered beneath them, but her claws were in its spine, her mouth around it, the back of its neck, shaking, yielding wholly to the song of survival, to the screaming demands of this body to kill, kill, kill. They tumbled into open water, the wyvern still fighting, her grip on its neck loosening. No, a warship loomed overhead, and Lysandra dug down deep, rallying her strength up one last time as she spread those wings and flapped up. She slammed the sea wyvern into the hull of the boat, now above them. The beast roared its fury. She slammed it again and again. The hull snapped, and so did the sea wyvern's body. Oh, thank God. Okay, she made it out of there alive. Okay. She watched the beast go limp, watched the water rush into the cleaving belly of the ship, listened to the soldiers aboard begin shouting. She eased her claws from the beast and let it drift to the bottom of the sea. One more ship. Just one more. She was so tired. Shifting afterward might not even be possible for a few hours. Lysandra broke the surface, drawing down air, bracing herself. Aylin's screaming hit her before she could submerge again. Not in pain, but in... No. No! N-O. Spells no. No, 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 no. Why the fuck? Y'all? What is about to happen? There's no fucking way. She's not dying. She can't die. She's literally Lysandra, and she cannot die. But warning, one word, over and over. One word for her. Swim. Lysandra craned her head toward where the queen stood atop the reef, but Aylin was pointing behind Lysandra, not at the remaining ship, but the open water, where three massive forms raged through the waves, aiming right for her. She's not gonna die. My girl's gonna get the fuck out of there. Or, hear me out, Adian's gonna come in clutch with those harpoons. He's got 3 of them, and how many were there? 3 massive forms. Adian's gonna hit him with pop, 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 and he's gonna save the day. Chapter 37. There he is. Adian. Yeah, Adian's gonna take him out. Yeah. Adian's queen was on the reef, Rowan beside her, his father and Fenris. It's not alive if my phone is not dying, and my phone is dying. So, sorry. Sorry, y'all. Chapter 37. I'm just gonna start over. Adian's queen was on the reef, Rowan beside her, his father and Fenris flanking them. Rolf and most of his men had made it to the opposite side of the narrow bay mouth, atop the reef there, and through the channel between them, 1 warship, 1 sea dragon, and 3 sea wyverns, adult sea wyverns. The first 2, they hadn't been full grown. Oh shit, the sentry said beside Adian on the watchtower, began chanting. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. The sea wyverns that, Rolf had claimed, would go to the ends of the earth to slaughter whoever killed their offspring. Only being in the heart of the continent might save you. But even then, waterways would never be safe. And Lysandra had just killed 2. It seemed they had not come alone, and from the cheering of the Valg soldiers on that remaining warship, it had been a trap. The offspring had been the bait. They had been only slightly bigger than Lysandra. The adults, the bulls, were thrice her size, longer than the warship now sitting there, archers firing at the men trying to swim ashore, and the channel that had become a death trap for the green sea dragon. The green sea dragon, who now stood between the 3 monstrous creatures and his queen, stranded on those rocks with not even an ember of magic left in her veins. His queen, screaming over and over and over at Lysandra to swim, to shift, to run. But Adian had seen Lysandra take on the 2 offspring. By the second, she'd been lagging, and he'd seen her change shape so often these past months to know she couldn't shift fast enough now. Perhaps might not have enough strength left to do it at all. She was stranded in her form, as surely as his companions were stuck on the reef, and if Lysandra even tried to climb onto shore, he knew the bulls would reach her before she could so much as haul her body out of the shallows. Faster and faster, those 3 bulls closed in. Lysandra remained at the mouth of the bay, holding the line. Adian's heart stopped. She's dead. one of the sentries hissed. Oh, God, she's dead. Shut your rutting mouth, Adian snarled, scanning the bay, slipping into that cold, calculating place that allowed him to make decisions in battle, to weigh the costs and risks. Dorian, however, got the idea before he did. Across the bay, hand uplifted and flickering bright as a star, Dorian signaled Lysandra again and again with his power. Come to me. Come to me. Come to me, the king seemed to call. The three bulls sank beneath the waves. Lysandra turned, plunging down, but not toward Dorian. Aelin stopped shouting, and Dorian's magic winked out. Adian could only watch as the shapeshifter's shadow soared toward the three bulls, meeting them head on. The three wyverns spread out, so huge Adian's throat went dry, and for the first time he hated his cousin. He hated Aelin for asking this of Lysandra, both to defend them and to secure the Messenians to fight for Terrasen. Hated the people who had left such scars on the shifter that Lysandra was so willing to throw her life away. Hated himself for being stuck in this useless tower with a war machine only capable of firing one shot at a time. Lysandra aimed for the wyvern in the middle, and when only 100 yards separated them, she veered left. They broke formation, one diving low, one keeping to the surface, and the other falling back. They were going to herd her to a spot where they'd surround her from every angle and then rip her to shreds. It would be messy and vicious, but Lysandra shot across the channel, headed right for the final remaining warship. Arrows rained down on her. Blood bloomed as some of... Oh my God. What the fuck is going on? What the fuck is going on? Blood bloomed as some found their mark through her jade scales. She kept swimming, her blood sending the bull closest to her, the one near the surface, into a frenzy, pushing himself faster to grab her, bite her. Lysandra neared the ship, taking arrow after arrow, and leapt out of the water. She crashed into the soldiers and wood and the mast, rolling, writhing, and bucking, the twin masts snapping under her tail. She hit the other side, flipping down into the water, red blood shining everywhere. Just as the wyverns on her ass leaped onto the ship in a mighty arc that took Adian's breath away, but with the jagged stumps of the masts jutting up like lances, the bull landed atop them with a crunch that Adian heard across the bay. He bucked, but there was wood now piercing through its back, and beneath his enormous weight the ship began to crack and sink. Lysandra wasted no time in getting clear, and Adian could barely draw breath as she shot across the bay again, the two bulls so horribly close to their wakes merged. One dove, the depth swallowing him from sight, but the second one, still on her tail. Lysandra led that one right into Dorian's range. She drew in as close to the shore and looming tower as she could get, bringing the second bull with her. The king stretched out both hands. The bull raged past, only to halt as ice slashed across the water. Solid ice, such as there had never been here. I'm sorry, y'all, I'm stressed. The sentries beside Adian fell silent. The bull roared, trying to wrest himself free, but the king's ice grew thicker, trapping the wyvern within its frozen grip. When the beast stopped moving, hoarfrost like scales covered him from snout to tail. Dorian loosed a battle cry. And Adian had to admit the king wasn't that useless after all, as the catapult behind Dorian sprang free, and a rock the size of a wagon jettisoned into the bay, right atop the frozen wyvern. Rock met ice and flesh, and the wyvern shattered into 1,000 pieces. Rolf and some of his men were cheering. People were cheering from the docks in town. But there was one... Oh, I'm sweating, y'all. My eyes keep skipping ahead! God! But there was one bull left in the harbor, and Lysandra she had no idea where the bull was. The long green body thrashed in the water, dipping beneath the waves, near frantic. Adian scanned the bay, rotating in the gunner chair as he did, searching for any hint of that colossal dark shadow. "Your left!" Gavriel roared across the bay, magic no doubt amplifying his voice. Lysandra twisted, and there the bull was, speeding out of the depths, as if he were a shark ambushing prey. Lysandra threw herself into movement. A field of floating debris lay around her, the sinking ships of their enemy, like islands of death, and there was the chain. If she could maybe get on it and climb high. No, she was too heavy, too slow. She again streaked past Dorian's tower, but the bull wouldn't get near. He knew doom awaited him there. He kept just out of range, playing with her as she launched back into the field of debris between the enemy ships toward the open sea. Aelin and the others watched helplessly from the reef outcropping as the two monsters swept by, the bull sending bits of broken hulls and masts into the air, aiming at the shifter. One struck Lysandra in the side, and she went down. Aedion shot out of his seat, a roar on his lips, but there she was, blood streaming from her as she swam, and she led that bull through the heart of debris, then cut back, sharply. The bull followed through the blood clouding the water, blasting through debris that she nimbly dodged. She'd worked him into a bloody frenzy, and Lysandra, damn her, led him to the remnants of enemy ships, where Valg soldiers were trying to save themselves. The bull exploded through soldier and wood as if they were veils of gossamer, leaping through the water, twining around debris and coral and bodies, the sunlight glinting on green scales and ruby blood. Lysandra led the bull into a dance of death, each movement slower as more of her blood leaked into the water, and then she changed course, heading into the bay, to the chain, and cut north, toward him. Aedion examined the massive bolt before him. 300 yards of open water separated her from the range of his arrow. "Swim!" Aedion roared, even if she couldn't hear him. "Swim, Lysandra!" Silence fell across the entirety of Skull's Bay as that Jade Sea, okay, swam for her life. The bull gained on her, diving down. I'm about to shit myself, y'all. I'm about to shit myself. The bull gained on her, diving down. Lysandra passed under the links of the chain, and the shadow of the bull spread beneath her. So small. She was so small compared to him. One bite was all it would take. Aedion slammed himself back into the gunner chair, gripping the levers and pivoting the machine as she swam and swam for him. One shot. That was all he'd have. One God's damned shot. I'm gonna throw up. I'm gonna throw up because I want her to be safe, and I feel like I know she's gonna be safe, but at the end of the day, I really don't know. Oh my God. I'm like sweating. Oh. Lysandra hurled herself forward, and Aedion knew she was aware of the death that loomed, knew she was pushing that sea dragon's heart to near stopping, knew that the bull had reached the bottom and now launched himself up toward her her vulnerable belly. Only a few more yards, only a few more heartbeats. Sweat slid down Aedion's brow, his own heart hammering so violently all he could hear was its thunder. He shifted the spear, slightly adjusting his aim. The bull raged up from the deep, maw open, ready to rip her in half with one blow. Lysandra passed into range and leaped clean out of the water, all sparkling scales and blood. The bull jumped with her, water streaming from its open jaws as it arced up. Aedion fired, slamming his palms into the lever. Lysandra's long body arched away from those jaws as the bull lifted clean out of the water, baring his white throat. As Aedion's massive spear went clean through it, oh thank God. Oh thank God, that's all, oh my God. Oh God. This is some high stakes shit. That was some high stakes shit I just read. Woo! My God. But my bitch is safe. That's all that matters. That's all I care about. She might be out of the game for a little bit because I know she's hurt and I know she lost a lot of blood. But she is safe. So I don't care. She can be out for the rest of this book as long as I know she's alive. I'm fine. Woo! My God. Blood spurted from the open jaws, and the creature's eyes went wide as he reared back. Lysandra slammed into the water, sending a plume so high it blocked out the side of both of them as they crashed into the sea. When it subsided, there was only the shadow of them, and a growing pool of black blood. The sentry babbled. "Load another one," he ordered, standing from his seat to scan the bubbling water. Where was she? Where was she? Aelin was perched on Rowan's shoulders, scanning the bay, and then a green head shot from the water. black blood spraying like spindrift as she hurled the severed head of the bull across the waves. Cheering, righteous, wild cheering, exploded from every corner of the bay, but Adian was already up and running, half leaping down the stairs that would take him toward the beach that Lysandra now swam for, her own blood replacing the black ichor that stained the water. So slow. Each of her movements was so painfully slow. He lost track of her as he descended below the tree line, his chest heaving. Roots and stones wrenched at him, but his swift feet flew over the loom until it turned to sand, until light broke through the trees, and there she was, sprawled on the beach, bleeding everywhere. Beyond them, out in the bay, Shipbreaker dropped low, and Rolf's fleet swept out to pick off the surviving soldiers and save any of their own still out there. He vaguely noted Aelin and the others diving into the sea, swimming hard for land. Adian dropped to his knees, wincing as sand sprayed on her. Her scaled head was nearly as big as he was, but her eyes, those green eyes, the same color as her scales, full of pain and exhaustion. Adian running to her. No, literally. Literally? I need them both alive and well, please. My phone is dying also, so I'm trying to charge it. Hold on. And then my charger is like rigged. And it only works. Oh, wait. Hold on. Hello? Do I sound like I'm far away? Whip it, whip it, whip it, whip it. Whatever. I just want to charge my phone. Fuck it. Okay. Let's just finish this fast because I feel like the chapter's about to end. Okay. He lifted a hand toward her, but she showed her teeth, a low snarl slipping out of her. He held up his hand. It was not the woman who looked at him, but the beast she'd become, as if she had given herself so fully to its instincts that it had been the only way to survive. There were gashes and slices everywhere, all dribbling blood, soaking the white sand. Rowan and Aelin, one of them could help, if they could summon any power after what the Queen had done. Lysandra closed her eyes, her breathing shallow. "Open your God's damned eyes," Adian snarled. She snarled back but cracked open an eye. "You made it this far. Don't die on the rutting beach." The eye narrowed, with a hint of female temper. He had to get the woman back, let her take control, or else the beast would never allow them near enough to help. "You can thank me when your sorry ass is healed." Again, that eye watched him warily, temper flickering. But an animal remained. Adian drawled, as his relief began to crumble his mask of arrogant calmness. "The useless sentries in the watchtower are now all half in love with you," he lied. "One said he wanted to marry you." A low snarl. He yielded a foot but held eye contact with her as he grinned. "But you know what I told them? I said that they didn't stand a chance in hell." Adian lowered his voice, holding her pained, exhausted stare. "Because I am going to..." Because if my phone dies while I'm reading this, I'm gonna be fucking pissed. Oh my god! Ah! Oh my god. What the fuck? Okay, there it goes. Yo! Oh my god! Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Shut. There we go. Okay, my phone is charging. We're good. I'm sorry. Okay. 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 Because I'm going to marry you, he promised her. One day. I am going to marry you. I'll be generous and let you pick when, even if it's 10 years from now, or 20. But one day, you are going to be my wife. I'm kicking my feet! Those eyes narrowed, and what he could only call female outrage and exasperation. He shrugged. Princess Lysandra Ashriver sounds nice, doesn't it? And then the dragon huffed in amusement. Exhaustion, but amusement. She opened her jaws, as if she'd tried to speak but realized she couldn't in his body. Blood leaked through her enormous teeth, and she shuddered in pain. Brush snapped and crashed, and there were Aelin and Rowan, and his father, and Fenris, all of them soaked, covered in sand, and gray as death. Fuck! Ah! I lost my spot! His queen staggered for Lysandra with a sob, flinging herself onto the sand before Aedion could bark a warning. But Lysandra only winced as the queen laid a hand on her, saying over and over, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Fenris and Gavriel, who had maybe saved her life with that amplified shout about the bull's location, lingered near the tree line as Rowan approached, surveying the wounds. Fenris spotted Aedion's glance, spotted the warning wrath on his face, if either of them got near the shifter, and said, That was one hell of a shot, boyo. His father nodded in silent agreement. Aedion ignored them both. Whatever well of magic his cousin and Rowan had depleted was already refilling. The shifter's wounds knitted close, one by one. Slowly, painfully slowly, but the bleeding stopped. She lost a lot of blood, Rowan observed, to none of them in particular. Too much. I've never seen anything like that in my life, Fenris murmured. None of them had. Aelin was trembling, a hand on her friend, face so white and drawn that any harsh words he'd reserved for her were unnecessary. His queen knew the cost. It had taken her so damn long to trust any of them to do anything. If Aedion roared at her now, even if he still yearned to, Aelin might never delegate again. Because if Lysandra hadn't been in the water when things had gone so badly... What happened? He breathed, catching Aelin's eye. What the hell happened out there? You see? He can think before he acts. He can think before he speaks. He's got some control over his temper. I lost control, Aelin said hoarsely, as if she couldn't help it. Her hand drifted to her chest, where, through the white of her shirt, he could make out the amulet of Orinth. He knew then, knew precisely what Aelin carried, what would have snagged Rolf's interest on that map of his, similar enough to the Valg essence to get him to come running. Knew why it had been so important, so vital, she risked everything to get it from Arab and Hamel. Knew that she had used a word key today, and it had almost killed them all. He was shaking now, that rage indeed taking over, but Rowan snarled at him, low and vicious. Save it for later, because Fenris and Gavriel had tensed, watching. Aedion growled right back at him. Rowan gave him a cold, steady look that said if he so much as began to hint at what their queen carried, he'd rip out his tongue. Literally. Aedion shoved down the anger. We can't carry her, and she's too weak to shift. Then we wait here until she can, Aelin said. But her eyes drifted to the bay, where Rolf was now being helped onto those rescue ships, and to the city beyond, still cheering. A victory, but very nearly a loss. The remnants of the Messenians saved by one of their long-lost sea dragons. Aelin and Lysandra had woven ancient prophecies into tangible fact. I'll stay, Aedion said. You deal with Rolf. His father offered from behind him. I can get supplies from the watchtower. Fine, he said. Aelin groaned, getting to her feet, but stared down at him before she took Rowan's extended hand. She said softly, I'm sorry. Aedion knew she meant it. He still didn't bother replying. Lysandra groaned. There's that fucking word. I can't say that word ever. Reverberations It's because I slur my words too much, running up his knees and straight into his gut, and Adian whirled back to the shifter. Aelin left without further goodbye. The lion lingered in the brush. He needs to forgive his father. I mean, he's so dead ass. He needs to forgive his father right now. Stop. The lion lingered in the brush, keeping out of sight and sound as the wolf watched over the dragon still sprawled across the beach. Stop. For hours, the wolf remained there, while the outgoing tide cleared the harbor of blood, while the pirate lord's ships sent any remaining enemy bodies to the crushing blue, while the young queen returned to the city in the heart of the bay to handle any fallout. Once the sun had begun to set, the dragon stirred, and slowly, her form shimmering and shrinking, scales were smoothed into skin, the snout melted back into a flawless human face, and stumpy limbs lengthened to golden legs. Sand crusted her naked body, and she tried and failed to rise. The wolf moved then, slinging his cloak around her and sweeping her into his arms. The shifter didn't object, and her eyes were again closed by the time the wolf began striding up the beach to the trees, her head leaning against his chest. The wolf remained out of sight and held in the offer to help. Oh my god, shut the fuck up. I was so happy and now I'm so sad. Held in the words he needed to say to the wolf, who had downed a sea wyvern with one arrow, 24 years old, and already a myth whispered over campfires. Today's events would no doubt be told around fires in lands even the lion had not roamed in all his centuries. The lion watched the wolf vanish into the trees, heading for the town at the end of the sandy road, the shifter unconscious in his arms. And the lion wondered if he himself would ever be mentioned in those whispered stories, if his son would ever allow the world to know who had sired him, or even care. Stop! I want to give Gabriel the world! Stop! Oh, poor Gabriel. I love him. Oh my god. Y'all, that was too much! What was that? Whip it, whip it, whip it, whip it. Oh, Gabriel. I have a feeling he's gonna die. It's so clearly marked. And Sarah's crying, so he's gonna die. No. No. Oh. Oh. No. At least, maybe not. I hope he doesn't die in this book, though. But people did say that this book was sad. People did say that this book was sad. Oh, so maybe he will die in this book. No. Can he at least make it to the very... Thinking about Gabriel dying is about to send me into... he's okay for now. He's okay for now. The end of this book had me sobbing so hard. Then why is the end of this book so sad? Why? Who dies? Does someone die? You don't have to tell me who, but so I can prepare myself. Does somebody die? Oh, okay. So then it can't be too sad if nobody dies. Then why is it sad? Does Aelin, like, abandon everybody because she... Do Aelin and Rowan break up? There are things worse than death. The only thing I can think of is, like, either Aelin and Rowan breaking up or someone getting taken away. Because, you know what? Hold on. Because now that I'm thinking about it, we haven't seen... Just know we'll be here with you. Thanks, bestie! I want to stitch that video that I was like, bring it on, Throne of Glass. But I want to wait until, like, I get, like, an assassin's blade. What the fuck? Hello? What's going on? Whip it, whip it, whip it, whip it. Oh, y'all are still here? That was weird. My life just, like, glitched. Anyway. It, like, this... It was weird. I don't know what... It was just a glitch. But, yeah, I turned off comments. Oh, you turned off comments, that's what. Oh, okay. The ending of this book gave you PTSD? What the hell? What happens? It can't be worse than the Assassin's Blade. Y'all, the Assassin's Blade is officially like my measurement of a sad book. I'm like, it's either as sad as the Assassin's Blade or it's not sad. Emilia Clarke walk. Y'all are scaring me. Y'all are scaring me. Okay, but like some of y'all that are saying that it's worse, the ending of this book is worse than Assassin's Blade. Is it worse than Assassin's Blade for you? Or is it worse than Assassin's Blade, like, in my terms of measurement? Because y'all see me, I can't read Sam's name without crying. It's sad because of different reasons. Oh, okay. It's different. Okay. We're good. I think I can take it. I think I can take it now. Woo! Yeah. Okay. I guess it is different since nobody dies. Then what the fuck? What the fuck happens? I guess we'll just have to find out. Damn. Yeah, I'm putting off reading Crescent City too. Yeah, I won't think about it. I mean, I like to talk about things. Like, I like to be like, what happens? Like, I like to start theorizing about what happens, or like, you know, get little clues from y'all to see if I can guess it. But and then I start thinking about it too much, and I'm like dreaming about it. So we'll stop. We'll stop there. It's even worse once you start Kingdom of Ash and you think back to the end of EOS. No mascara for the last couple of chapters. Oh god. Okay. All right, well, the only way to do it is just do it. We still have a lot of ground to cover, so I'm not too worried about getting there too soon. We still have like this whole chunk of the book left, and then Tower of Dawn, which is in the backseat of my car. So yeah, we're good. All right, well, that was scary, but this was fun for y'all. It was fun for me, but in a very high stakes, I'm stressed out of my mind kind of way. But we did get Adian confessing, and I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna highlight what he said, and I'm gonna tab it, and I'm gonna just die happily now. I'm so happy. But the next live will be tomorrow. I don't think I have a test tomorrow. No, I don't. I just have an essay due tonight that I have to go home and write that I'm not looking forward to. But essays are super easy for me, so I think I'll get it done pretty quickly. How do you feel about our characters we didn't get to see much in this life? Like Dorian, he's the love of my life. He saved Lysandra's life. I would like to get back to Lorcan and Lead, and I would like to get back to Manon, because I have no idea what happened to Manon. So, but yeah, I mean, this kind of took up the forefront of my mind. So yeah, I really wasn't thinking about anyone else other than Lysandra. But yeah, we will be back tomorrow for another live. I think it'll be at normal time at 2:30 Central Time. But yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow. Love y'all. Thank you for being here today. And yeah, I hope y'all have a nice night / afternoon / morning, wherever y'all are. And I'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye. Oh wait. Oh yeah.